Hey, what's up, Spartan Nation? Welcome to another episode of the Spartan Nation Podcast. Here with your host, Matt Lonsberry, and my co-host, Aiden McCrone. Aiden, I was just saying before we jumped on live here, it kind of feels like we're kind of getting back into the routine a little bit, reacting to a game in a timely manner. Obviously, talking about the Michigan State game last night. Looking forward to digging into that. But yeah, it's been kind of a weird month as far as podcasts. This is maybe our second or third one this month. Um, Ever since like the holiday season, I don't know if it's like the weather outside and the gloominess
Yeah.
or whatnot, but like motivation's been kind of hard to come by and just felt like a little out of rhythm. But I feel like we're getting it back here. So I'm ready to dive in. Go ahead and jump in the comment section, you guys, and we'll interact with you throughout the evening here. But with that, I think we'll just kind of dive right in and start talking about what went down last night in East Lansing. Obviously, Michigan State comes away with a victory, 81-66 over the in-state rival Wolverines. And obviously, the biggest news of from that game is just the fact that it was win number 700 for Tom Izzo. And so let's dive right in, Aiden. Um, so let's talk about the game a little bit, and then we'll get into some of the milestones and accomplishments that went down last night. Um, Michigan led for the majority of the first half. They were knocking down some difficult shots. Michigan State's defense was lacking at times as well. It was kind of a combination of those two things. At one point, Michigan was shooting, I want to say 77% in the first half there, and I was talking to another reporter next to me. I was like, well, if Michigan's going to shoot 77%, they're probably going to win this game. Obviously, he's saying that tongue in cheek because nobody's going to shoot 77% for a whole game, but tide really turned in the second half. About a minute and a half in or so, I think Tyson Walker came up with a loose ball steal type of situation, went down and scored a layup, and the Spartans were kind of off to the races from there. Went on a 16-1 run to turn about a 5-point deficit into a 10-point lead, and then it was curtains from there. So, talk about how the game played out, Aiden. Your perspective on that, and your takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I thought MSU didn't have a terrible first half. Just Michigan shot the lights out and were pretty good. And, it started to seem like they were going to take advantage of kind of MSU's flaw. I mean, Terrace Reed hit a three, which was kind of
Yeah,
crazy. Um, yeah, he and Kamwa were playing well in the first half, and then MSU, they made an adjustment at halftime, and whether that was, an actual schematic adjustment or just kind of some yelling going around from Izzo or whoever the leaders were in the locker room, something changed, and they tightened the screws on them, and they played a really good defensive second half. I thought
for sure.
that the steals that they got, you mentioned the Walker one, the Holloman, stealing a 4-on-1
Yeah,
was pretty impressive. The Cohen car block, I think, that was definitely a highlight reel, kind of play. So, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good takeaways, and Michigan played them tough, and I think that's something that everyone expected. But I mean, they are who they are. I mean, they're 7-14 right now,
yeah,
so I think it is an achievement. Obviously, 700 games is huge, and they should pat themselves on the back. But at the same time, looking forward, I think they have Maryland next, right? Um, so
yep,
just working up to that game because that's going to be a close game, and just they just got to start getting a streak going because that's what they really need right now to not only solidify themselves in the tournament, but just to help their seeding, and then they can. I mean, I think they can get all the way up to as close as fourth in the Big Ten if they really go on a hot streak here. But they're a long ways away from that, and that starts in this stretch in February. That's going to be a lot of very winnable games, and I think I said it last week that I really do expect them to win all of those, including against Illinois. So I think, yeah, it's good to start the momentum, but they just really need to sustain it and keep it going.
no, for sure. You got to start stacking wins here.
Mm.
as we turn the calendar from January into February, and then obviously February is a shorter month, and so then March is right around the corner, and then we're into tournament time. So this is the time to start stacking those wins and building some momentum for the end of the season. Yeah, you mentioned Terrace Reed knocking down a three. Izzo actually had a comment about that in the post game press conference. He referred to Wisconsin with Stephen Krall and some of those guys who haven't hit many threes throughout the year, but shot the ball well against Michigan State. That was Terrace Reed's first career 3-pointer, and it looked pure. It was nothing but net. One of those things where you just kind of throw your hands up. But yeah, Michigan State did a good job of responding to whatever that halftime message was. Based on a story I think I saw from Graham Crouch of the Lansing State Journal, it sounded like Davis Smith, the son of legendary Steve Smith, he challenged the team at halftime. I'm talking about Davis Smith, who is I think he's on scholarship now, actually.
Yeah.
On scholarship now, challenged the team. AJ Hoggard talked about rising to a challenge from I think Izzo was the one who challenged both AJ and Tyson Walker to play better in the second half. We'll get into Tyson's night a little bit later. But yeah, they got the job done. You mentioned the defensive effort in the second half. It was really, really solid. Michigan shot, I think, 25% from the floor after halftime. So it really just shut them down. And like I said, once Michigan State started getting that momentum, and the Breslin Center really started to come alive, Michigan was powerless to halt that momentum or to switch this thing around at all. And so yeah, that leads to kind of the big topic, which was Tom Izzo's 700th win. Obviously, it just speaks to the longevity of his career, being in year 39 now. As I got to the Breslin Center about an hour before tip off, just because I like to get there early and kind of take in the setting and all of that. But I was working on the story that I would write last night regarding the 700th win, and looking at some of the names of the guys who have done it at one school, and there's not many of them. I counted 8 or 9. I can't remember exactly. Obviously, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, Don Haskins at UTEP, which was back the Glory Road is the movie based on that team and that his teams. So some legendary names up there. But there's not many of them who have done it all at one school, and Izzo has. So it just adds to his already a legendary career, a Hall of Fame career. But I think I saw like a promo on Michigan State's official Twitter page about the legend keeps growing, and that's really what it is. He's just continues to stack more and more accomplishments, more and more milestones. And it got me thinking a little bit. I don't if you divvy up wins by year and things like that, how many would it take for him to get to 800? I don't know if he's going to get to 800, and I think it's up in the air. We're not sure. Would it take? It would be 20 wins per season over the next 5 if he's going to be there for 5 more years. Maybe he'll get there, maybe not. But it was cool to be there though for that moment. Some of my earliest sports memories are watching Michigan State with my dad. And so just I thought about that a lot yesterday and even some today too. It's just thinking back on those early days, some of those early memories when I was a kid. And it was just cool to be in the building for that moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you think about, the different, kind of there's always some games that people remember, I mean, I think a lot of, newer or younger people remember, the Duke game in 2019. That Michigan rivalry between Izzo and Beeline for so long. That was really fun to watch over the years. I mean, there's plenty of memories along the way. I think 2000, I think it was 2010, the Corey Lucius buzzer beater against Maryland,
Yeah.
Get them in the Final Four. I mean, there's just a ton of memories, and I'm sure a lot of people from the older crowd will remember, more stuff from, the late 90s and then the national championship team in 2000. So yeah, I mean, every one of them counts. They were talking on the broadcast about his first win was in the Maui Invitational against Chaminade, and they and all the way, fast forward to now where you just beat Michigan, and you're in a place that you could be successful, and they could go on a run here, and maybe make some more special memories. And yeah, we're closer to 800. I'll be interested to see if that's something he's looking for in the future, because he talked about what retirement's going to look like for him, and what when he does retire, no one's really going to know. There's not going to be a farewell tour or anything. So is he trying to work to get to that 800, or kind of what his motives are? I'd be interested to see in the upcoming years.
Yeah, no, one of the things that Izzo said in the post game press conference was, how much it meant to him that all of them came at Michigan State. And the more I thought about that, the more it sounds like an Izzo quote, because he's kind of the guy who has pushed for rosters staying together, and he's not a huge fan of the transfer portal. But he's also, it's not just this curmudgeon attitude he has towards it. It's also the fact that he thinks it's better for players to kind of battle through adversity and work their way onto the floor and all that. And I respect that that perspective that he has, and that opinion that he has. I might disagree a little bit with his keeping the portal at arm's length a little bit, just because, as we talked about in the last show, that's a place where talent can be found. But at least on one night, it wasn't like a lot of that stuff was kind of out the window, and it was just about celebrating the moment and all that. Let's dig a little bit more into the game itself. James McCrone, I'm assuming this is your pops, is there in the comment section. And this is great, though, because this is kind of the transition I wanted to make anyway. Let's talk about Jaden Akins' night. A career night, career high 7 3-pointers made, leads to a career high 23 points overall. Did some things in other areas with 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals. He looked like the guy that we haven't seen, I guess, him play that well, I think, this season. He had the game against Stony Brook, but again, that's a lesser opponent. But against a Big Ten team to show up in this game the way he did, got some early open looks. Knocked those down, and I think once he saw those go in, it was just like off to the races from there, and he's never looked that confident as he did last night. Talk about his night.
I think those open looks are really crucial, because I don't think he has really gotten many of those opportunities lately. And whether it's kind of who's the primary ball handler, it does seem that Akins could be used in better ways, I think, more than just being a spot up shooter. But he did show yesterday that he can be a spot up shooter too. But I think his athleticism, I still believe that Tyson's pretty good running off ball. I still think he could get some more touches and opportunities to run the point when Hoggard's not in. I think Holloman is a good player, but I think offensively Akins has a lot more upside. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. So,
sure.
So yeah, I mean, I still think he should get a few opportunities, but I think last night just showed that when the ball's in his hands, he can make a lot of things happen. And you saw in the Wisconsin game that it was hard for him to get opportunities. I don't think he did that much against Maryland in a game that they fought back in and kind of won in the end. So yeah, I think getting him more opportunities will help them offensively. And we know what he can do offense or defensively. I do think he's one of the better rebounders on the team. And I think they just put in a all around performance yesterday, which showcased him more than anything, because Tyson Walker can't do it every night. So that's
sure.
Huge.
Yeah, no, I mean, interested to see what this means for the rest of Akins' season, just because, he's not going to shoot 70% from 3 from here on out. But last year he shot 42% from long range last year, and going into the Michigan game, he was at, I want to say 35.6 or somewhere around that. So that's, a significant drop off from a year ago. Now he goes 7 for 10. I think he raised his percentage by about 3.5 points. So he's sitting at 39% now after last night's game, which is more in line of what we kind of expected from him. I do think you're right as far as like there's other ways that he can be involved in the offense. Wouldn't mind seeing him with the ball in his hands a little bit more. But this was a good first step towards maybe a strong finish to his junior season. And it couldn't have come at a better game as last night. So great to see him have that breakout game against the Wolverines. You referenced Cohen Carr's block earlier. I want to talk about both Cohen and Xavier Booker because this was kind of like the main subject of our previous show about wanting to see more of these guys. And we did see Booker earlier than I think we've seen him in quite a while. He only played 3 minutes in the first half, but he came in, he banked a three. He was probably juiced a little bit, just speaking from experience as a basketball player. Sometimes you're a little amped and it comes out a little hot, but fortunately he's at the top of the key, and so he banks in the 3-pointer, grabbed a rebound, had what was really close to a clean block on the defensive end too.
Yeah.
Might have gotten the wrist on the follow through, but it was awfully clean. He definitely got ball first. So I thought he had a good little spurt there in the first half. And then Cohen. Cohen makes a driving layup where he just took on the physicality of the defender, knocked him over, but finished the layup. And I think it was the very next possession on the other end. Michigan actually ran a really nice set and got Olivier Kamwa, one of their better players, on a roll. He was wide open in the lane, going to throw down a thunder dunk, and here comes Cohen Carr out of nowhere and had one of probably the best block I've ever seen live. I think that's pretty safe for me to say. Me being in the building, might have been the best block I've ever seen, period. Just coming across from the weak side. And that's like the definition of an eraser right there. Obviously, Breslin really came to life. Just an incredible play, just highlighting that athleticism again. Give me your reaction to that play specifically, Aiden, because I was shocked by it because I was like, oh, there comes a big dunk, and then it just gets taken away. And obviously when you're in the building and it erupts like that, it was really spine tingling.
Yeah, I was in awe by that. I was not expecting him to, come all the way over and block that. So, that's huge. That's huge for momentum. It doesn't, it just shows up on the stat sheet as a block, but it does a lot more for that than just a block. So I think that's big. The fact that Cohen Carr, just his athleticism, he can be a spark plug at any moment. I mean, I feel the same way about Akins. Just those two guys are the two most athletic players on the team. So, they have an opportunity every time they get the ball or every time they're on defense to make a big block and make a big dunk or something like that. So I think that is a reason, and that's convincing to Izzo why he should be getting more minutes. I think Booker, you like you mentioned, he came in, he hit a three. I think that's something that they're looking for more scoring from their front court, and I think that's something he is showing that he can offer. I think defensively, there's still a lot to work on, but Jackson Kohler's kind of in the same boat. I think
Sure.
I think Kohler has I think he's gotten better defensively, but having him and Booker, that's something they got to work on, which is probably why Izzo's a little bit hesitant to play Booker, but he looked well last night. I think it's important to get those younger players in the rivalry games. Get them in there early, let them understand what the feeling of a game like that is and kind of what that means for the program. So I think that's probably where Izzo's coming from. So I'll be interested to see if that has earned Booker playing time against Maryland coming up, and Carr earned him more playing time than he's already been getting. So I'll be interested.
Yeah, for sure. Izzo called it one of the great blocks in the history of the Breslin, and I obviously have to agree with that. I was a little bit surprised with. Again, it's a short stint. A 3-minute stint is not a lot of time out there. I think Cohen played 6 minutes in the first half, which also isn't a ton of time.
Mhm.
Probably would have liked to seen them a little bit more in the second half, but the flip side of that is Michigan State got on such a run there and such a roll. Michigan burned several timeouts, so guys were fresh, and it's hard to argue with leaving guys on the floor when things are going as well as they were
Mhm.
through the majority of that second half. So didn't have a huge problem with that. But like you, I'm interested to see if we continue to see more minutes out of Booker down the stretch. And for Cohen Cohen with a kid that athletic, and I understand he's a freshman and he probably isn't in the right spots defensively all the right times, but as I said before, he makes up so much of that because of how athletic he is. We've seen now several times where he's coming from the weak side to block a guy who looked like they had a wide open layup or a dunk. This was just the most spectacular of those plays, but we've seen that quite a bit this year, and I think maybe the thing holding Cohen back a little bit is just the fact that he's not a floor spacer, so he's not a shooter, um, and so maybe you don't want him on the floor as opposed to an Akins or somebody else at the 3 spot. But at the same time, he's a little bit undersized for the 4, and so and Izzo's talked about sometimes the defensive matchups and things like that due to his smaller size. So I get all that. My rebuttal would be, man, it's hard to keep that kid off the floor. Just from what we've seen, the little spurts that he has out
Mhm.
there, he's so good in those spurts that I would certainly be tempted to keep increasing his minutes, and maybe Tom will as the season goes on. Um, I want to talk about something else here. I got it in my notes. Maybe we'll move on to the milestones. There was something about that topic that I wanted to get to, but I can't remember off the top of my head because I kind of got on a rant there. But anyway, a couple of more milestones for AJ Hoggard and Malik Hall. AJ, final minute of the game, Holloman. You mentioned Holloman's steal on a 4-on-1, and he got it up to AJ, who kind of scored through traffic to to get his 1,000th career point. And with that, earlier this season, AJ had eclipsed 500 career assists. And so now he's in a very exclusive club of guys who have scored 1,000 points and handed out 500 assists. There's only 6 others outside of AJ who have done that. Kalen Lucas, Drew Neitzel, Denzel Valentine, Cassius Winston, Mateen Cleaves, and Scott Skiles. That's a pretty exclusive club and a special group to be in. When I saw the graphic that Michigan State put out today, it was a cool graphic with just those other guys in the background. So we've talked about AJ quite a bit on this show. Most of us agree he has his ups and he has his downs, but it does, again, it speaks to that longevity and how he has continued to improve. And despite knocking heads with Izzo's at times throughout his career, he didn't jump in the transfer portal. He stuck it out, and he's rewarded by being one of those guys in that exclusive club. So when you see those other names that AJ is now alongside and will be for the rest of history, what's your reaction to it? And talk about how he played last night, because I thought he was good, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good distributor. I think at times it's just frustrating because he can make some turnovers that are just massive head scratchers. But I think his upside is, like you said, like you mentioned, he's up there with some of the great playmakers that MSU's ever had. But yeah, he can make some more head scratching plays than the rest of them. But overall, he's still been one of the best kind of distributors, and um, he can create his own shot. He can go off the dribble. He's not the greatest 3-point shooter, but he's improved at it. But he's been able to create his own shot, get to the rim, and make a lot of layups. But yeah, he played well last night. I think that's a big key is We've always talked about is those teams having turnovers. So when he's on his game, the turnovers stay to a minimum. So that's huge, and that really helped them. And I think Michigan, they said Michigan was like second in the Big Ten in scoring offense, but dead last in defense, and
Yeah.
that showed last night as well. And he was part of. I think he had like at least three, if not more, of Akins' 7 3-pointers. He had uh, three or four of those assists from that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so everyone benefited. So yeah, we'll see what he can do, in March. And again, like I said, coming up in February, that's huge. That MSU is really going to need him, and Malik Hall coming up.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about this team. And I saw this on Twitter today as well. Michigan State's averaging just 10 turnovers per game this season, and their turnover percentage is 14.8, which means 14.8 of their percent of their possessions end in a turnover. Both of those are the lowest of the Tom Izzo era, and Tom Izzo's been around for nearly 40 years. And so that's actually something that this team has done really well is limit those turnovers, which is strange to say because that's been one of the complaints for a long time with Tom Izzo coach teams is they turn the ball over too often. But this team has done a really good job of taking care of the ball. And to your point, I think AJ is kind of the catalyst of this. He has cut down on those boneheaded giveaways, those ones that are unforced. A lot of those have been cut down this year, and that's the result. You get more possessions. It's probably why Michigan State's offense can come and go still, but I remember the last 2 years where they would have stretches where they just could not buy a basket, and they really
Mm.
struggled. Had long, 6 minute stretches where they didn't score. That's not been happening nearly as often this season. Maybe a few times here or there, but I think the lack of turnovers has been a big reason for that. There's too many good players, too many scorers on this team. Um, for you to go with a 6 minute stretch without scoring if you're taking care of the ball. And that's been kind of what we've seen out of this team. Michigan State is number 3 in the Big Ten in fewest turnovers and number 40 nationally. You consider the fact that there's 300 and some Division One teams. They're way up there. I remember the thing I wanted to talk about earlier, and it was the fact that Michigan State did use kind of a two big lineup again at times against Michigan,
Mm.
but the difference was I don't think we saw Mady Sissoko and Carson Cooper on the floor together at any point. If it was very brief. I saw Jackson Kohler with Carson out there a few times. Xavier Booker played with another center at times. Um, when I first saw it, I think it was Kohler and Cooper when I first kind of noticed it. I kind of inwardly cringed a little bit, but I do like that better. I like the adjustment to have at least one guy, either be Kohler or a Booker, who has more of a scoring, is more of a scoring threat in the post than to have Sissoko and Cooper out there at the same time. So I thought it was better. React to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're looking for. In previous years, you've had Joey Hauser, who's been able to do that, where it's you can have Sissoko out there, and you can have someone, another forward who who's big enough to guard, a big guy defensively, and then offensively is able to stretch the floor, and shoot in the perimeter. So I think that's what they're looking for. I mean, we've seen Jackson Kohler since he's been back take some 3-pointers, and I think that's something we didn't see last year at all. So I think that's something that they've been working on and planning on. And, we've seen what Booker can do offensively. And I think that's the, big thing that's earning him playing time. And then the thing that's drawing him back from getting playing time is, the lack of defense. And I think that, the level of physicality is what Izzo's kind of referring to when he's saying that. So I think that's something that they're testing right now, and they're either going to have to learn to live with it, or they're going to give more minutes to Kohler, or at least try to.
Yeah, no, I thought he he got in some, not, I won't say foul trouble, but he did pick up a few fouls here and there. There was some interesting calls, I guess, especially in the second half. Michigan went from being red hot to ice cold offensively. They started driving the basketball a lot, and they went to the free throw line quite a bit in the second half. But fortunately for Michigan State, Michigan shot really poorly from the free throw line. But I thought Jackson wasn't quite as fluid as he was in I think the previous game against Wisconsin, or maybe it was the one before that I thought he looked as good as he's looked so far this year in limited time. But to your point, though, I think he is starting to come back a little bit. He does give a Michigan State another option down there in the post, and looking forward to again seeing him progress as the year goes on. Last thing I want to talk about was Malik Hall, because he did reach another milestone himself. It's about 3 weeks ago that he eclipsed 1,000 points. And then last night, only 3 rebounds, but that pushed him over 600 for his career. So he becomes the 22nd Michigan State player all time to have 1,000 points and 600 rebounds. So not quite as an elite of a club as the one that AJ Hoggard joined, but still an exclusive. You talk about 22 guys in the history of Michigan State basketball. Good to see that for Malik, just because we've known about the ups and downs, both in his play. We've talked about consistency a lot with Malik, but also dealing with the foot injuries and other nicks and bruises that have limited his playing time over the last couple of seasons. So it's good to see him reach those milestones and get recognized for that as well. And maybe not as big of an impact last night offensively as we've seen from him recently, but again, putting together the best stretch of his career, in my opinion. Your reaction to Malik Hall's accomplishment of joining that 600 rebounding club?
Yeah, I think that's big. I mean, it took him 5 years, but that
Sure.
that kind of speaks to where he's come. And yeah, like you said, I think this stretch right here outside of um can't remember which game it was exactly, but outside of this, this stretch of the last 9-10 games, this has been his best stretch of
Yep.
his career, and that's something that you want to see, and that's something that you expect out of a guy who's in his 5th year. So I think that's huge. And the rebounding, they really need to rely on him, and especially in the Big Ten. And then once you get into the tournament play, they're going to really rely on him, because I think, we've talked about, the front court between Sissoko, Cooper, Kohler, Booker. I think all of those guys at, any given night can have a good night, but I think, they also lack consistency. So I think that's really where Malik Hall is going to has to step up and be a leader in. And, again, this stretch of 9 or 10 games, he's shown that he can offensively and defensively. So I think that's huge. And, yeah, it's critical to their success.
Yeah, for sure. Just want to give a quick shout out to the comment section, Eggplant and JJ. Good to see you guys. Welcome back. Let's tie a bow, I guess, on the basketball topic, and then we'll move into football a little bit to close things out. But tying a bow on the basketball, you mentioned Maryland on Saturday. You're at home. This is a game that you got to defend home floor. This is a game that Michigan State should win. You got to go do it. It's not going to be an easy one, but again, expectations are that you win that game. And then next week, a little bit more interesting, just because you go on the road to Minnesota. That's a team that has struggled a bit this year. Looking at the Big Ten standings here, yeah, they're 13-7 overall, 4-5 in the Big Ten. So yeah, they're right there in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten. But you're on the road. That's a team that played Michigan State tough at the Breslin Center not too long ago. And then you're back home again, but it's against number 14 Illinois. No, that's going to be a challenging game too. So just kind of increases the need to go get this win on Saturday to continue this this positive momentum, because next week things get tough.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, every game is as winnable as it is losable, for sure. Especially in this, Big Ten kind of this season specifically. I think, you've seen Purdue drop some games, you've seen Illinois drop some games. I mean, MSU, obviously we know about the preseason hype coming into this year. Expected to compete with Purdue and kind of compete nationally, being top 5, and then kind of what they are now. And I think they're trying to get back there. But yeah, I mean, Maryland's gonna keep it close. Minnesota's gonna keep it close. It's gonna like we said, it's gonna come down to the guys we've been talking about. It's gonna come down to Malik Hall and how well he rebounds, and kind of the quality minutes that the two freshmen can put in, and what AJ Hoggard can do and keep turnovers to a minimum. And then, how can they get Akins involved more? How can, Tyson can't score 20 every night, but who else
Sure.
is? And kind of what they've been doing, because Walker's slowed down a little bit. So, over the last 2 games, I think against Michigan, I think he only had 11, and I think the game before he only had 14 or 15. So, having guys step up, everyone contributing, keeping that consistency up, that's really huge for this stretch. And, getting a win against Illinois could be it could go a long way, because that could be the difference in, resumes on selection Sunday,
Sure.
between a 7 seed and a 6 seed, or any kind of situation you put yourself into, because Baylor is a quality win, but they're kind of looking for another one outside of Baylor and in Indiana State. I think it would probably be a good argument for their second best win this year. So yeah, figuring that out, and then yeah, just going from there. But again, like I said, I kind of expect them to win every game in February, and if they lose one, I think that's kind of they're on the right track and they're still on pace. But if they lose 2, that's going to be questionable. I think that's where you start to worry a little bit.
Sure. And Chris, I'm glad you brought this up in the comment section. I wrote this down as something I wanted to talk about a little bit. I don't like ending the segment now on this, but let's talk about it, because it is
Mhm.
a factor. Walker a little bit off his game last night, 0 for 6 from 3. Just again struggled a little bit with his shot. And to your point, similar against Wisconsin, where he struggled to make the same kind of offensive impact that he's made through most of the year. Any level of concern here, Aiden, or is this kind of something what happens with as a college basketball season goes on? Other guys have certainly had stretches where they've struggled. Walker's been even earlier in the year when he wasn't quite shooting the ball the way we expected. He found other ways to score. So I guess let's talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what I just referred to, and just in terms of the consistency, having that supporting cast. If Aiken scores 23, then I don't think it's that big of an
Sure,
issue.
not a
But
big deal.
yeah, but like you said, the Wisconsin game, I think he had 15, but it was not very efficient at all.
Yeah,
So I
right.
think that's something that they got to work on, and obviously you're going to rely on him to be your primary scorer. But at the same time, yeah, if it's not his night, who else is going to step up? And I think that's really the biggest reason why I think Akins needs to be involved more.
Yeah, for sure. 2 not very efficient games in a row. That's notable, but
Mhm.
not cause for concern. That starts to turn into 3, 4, or 5, and then you're saying, okay, now
Yeah.
what's wrong with Tyson? So we're not there yet, but definitely something to watch for on Saturday against Maryland at home. Hoping to see him bounce back, and
Mhm.
maybe that'll lead to good things as well. So with that, Aiden, I think we'll tie a bow on basketball, and we'll close things out just talking a little bit of football. Not a ton going on right now in the world of college football. Well, the world of college football, sure, there's plenty, but Michigan State's world, not so much. But the second signing period is a week from today, so maybe we'll see Michigan State add a few more pieces. They did add a preferred walk-on running back today. I noticed. Didn't look into that very much yet, but did notice that. And there's a little bit of they might be trending for a couple of defensive linemen going into the second signing day, so we'll keep an eye on that as well. But the thing I really wanted to talk about was earlier today, Michigan State announced a spring showcase is what they're calling this year's spring game. We're definitely going to get your thoughts on that. I have my own. And then it was about a half hour before we went live. They actually released their full schedule for spring practice. And so just to kind of give the audience a look at what that's going to be like, spring practice will start on March 19th, and it runs for 5 weeks. The NCAA allows 15 practices in the spring for football programs, and Michigan State is going to run its practices on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and that will culminate in the spring showcase on April 20th. So there's already some 420 jokes out there about that's the when Michigan State is going to have their spring showcase. And so yeah, that's what they're calling this first version of the spring game under Jonathan Smith. I did pull up MLive's story on the spring showcase, and this is kind of how it concluded. I thought this was kind of informative. So I'll just read that real quick. This is from, what's the guy? Matt Wenzel. He says, it's unclear exactly what the spring showcase will look like with Smith calling the shots, but he had an event with the same name while at Oregon State last year. Newspaper in Oregon reported it involved about 45 minutes of practice and an hour of scrimmaging. So that kind of gives you an idea of what Jonathan Smith did with Oregon State last year. So that's kind of what I would anticipate maybe seeing out of Michigan State this year. Not super surprised about this, just given the it's a brand new roster for Smith and a lot of his coaching staff. There's still some holes to fill depth wise. Little bit disappointed because I would love to just see a very traditional spring game and kind of see him go at it. But I'll give you the ball on this and say, what's your reaction to it? Because I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, looking from his spring, I guess now that it's called spring showcase, from his spring showcase at Oregon State last year, from what I saw, it wasn't like a, one team versus another. It was just offense versus defense the whole time. So that's what it looked like. And I don't know, they had the scoring, a certain way. So for the defense, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we want to see, more competition in the spring. So I think the fact that we're getting at least an hour of it is better than none. So I think that's really what I'm looking for. I think, I kind of expect there to be some roster moves after spring, which whether it be, the guys who entered the portal and then came back, maybe to, boost their stock so they can, the new staff puts in a good word for them, or kind of however that goes. I do still expect some turnover in the spring, but I'm eager to see. I think there's going to be some players step up from that, our incoming freshmen that are going to get an opportunity to play, and I think there's going to be, some transfers that are going to really stick out. Obviously, the whole quarterback situation, there's 4 new quarterbacks. They're all enrolled already. Kind of what that offense is going to look like, or at least kind of the base of it is going to be kind of installed in the spring. So seeing kind of what that looks like, and then obviously it's a brand again on the other side. There's a brand new defense, whole new scheme, brand new coaches. So looking there, kind of who's kind of who is stayed at MSU? Are they gonna are those guys gonna get more opportunities, or they're it's just starting from scratch and some new guys emerge? I think that defensive backfield with Dylan Tatum, Jane Mangum, Charles Brantley, Malik Spencer. I think those are 4 veteran guys. I'll be interested to see what Blue Adams has for them in terms of their development, and then kind of where they fit schematically. I think Tatum was, he was a 4-star prospect that came in, who could play safety, who could play nickel, and then we saw him at corner last year. So kind of where does he fit? Does Brantley has kind of been on and off the last year. So is he going to get a chance to play, or is someone else going to jump ahead of him? So yeah, I think there's a lot of, positive things to look at. And I think, while they did go 4-8, I think, having a good staff in place that has been known for developing guys. And Oregon State has never had a top class, and they've really worked to get those guys. And there's a prospect, I can't remember his name, who's an offensive lineman who's really lighting it up at the Senior Bowl right now from Oregon State. And that kind of just speaks to what the
Sure.
staff that's coming over right now has done. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's funny, like it's spring practice. You're not seeing any like real
Hmm.
live action, but just I'm always excited when it does come around, just because it's a little bit of a taste during a long off season. And there's gonna be a lot of new for Michigan State this year. New offensive scheme. Excited to see what that looks like, and at least a little bit of a very surface level picture of it at that showcase.
Hmm.
New defensive scheme under Joe. I'm not sure if it's Rossi or Rossi, but we'll
Rossi,
learn
yeah.
that it's Rossi. Okay. New defensive scheme under him. Getting our first glimpse of that. Getting our first look at Aiden Childs at quarterback.
Hmm.
Now I'm sure he'll be in a red jersey, so won't be any contact or anything like that. But again, just seeing him on the field live for the first time, looking forward to it. See how he looks, how he moves. Very impressive on tape when I've watched highlights of him. But looking forward to seeing him in person as well. And going back to just the end of that story of M Live that I mentioned, I was more disappointed before reading that, just because Tucker's things last year were pretty dry. I'll just say that there wasn't a whole lot to. It was hard to. I tried to do takeaways afterwards just to give the fan base something to chew on a little bit, and it was hard because it was hard to pull out certain things. But an hour long of scrimmage, if that is in fact what we get, I think that will be longer than what we got last year and the year before. So we'll take what we can get at this point for sure, but definitely looking forward to it. Um, yeah, I think that's all I really had to touch on with football, unless there's something else that comes to mind for you. Just, but again, it's a more of a quieter time of year. So, any final thoughts, I guess, on football?
No, I mean, they have the national signing day. I know they just got a commitment from 3-star receiver Jalen Brown out of Texas the few days ago. So
Yep.
I think they're finishing that up. They're close to that 85 scholarship limit. I think they're gonna be a little bit over it. If I remember correctly, they might be one or two guys over by spring, and then they'll filter that out after. So I think
Sure.
there's a lot to look forward to, but that's a lot of it's kind of a ways away. So I'll be I think I'll be surprised if they add more than, I'd say, 2 or 3 guys on
Sure.
National Signing Day, but I do still kind of expect them to add at least 2, and then yeah, and then go from there. So I think yeah, but they got a lot of the important players in this recruiting class are already enrolled, so I think that's a big thing.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And JJ brought up Jalen Brown as well.
Mm,
Can't remember how many receptions he had as a senior last year, but I know he was over 900 yards receiving, and I want to say 11 or 12 touchdowns as well his senior year. So, and
mm,
we've talked about this before. You pull a 3-star out of Texas, you feel pretty good about taking a shot out of a
yeah,
kid from Texas, just because that's one of
right.
those recruiting hotbeds where there's a ton of good players in Texas. Georgia's that way, Florida's that way,
Mm,
um, California's that way, especially at the skill positions. And Ohio, you feel good about 3 stars out of those areas, and so yeah, for sure we'll take a flyer out on a kid out of Texas
yeah.
anytime. So looking forward to that. Um, with that, Aiden, I think we'll call it a show. Touched on the different beats that we wanted to get to. Again, Michigan State, another big game coming up on Saturday. Trying to start stacking some wins here as the calendar flips into February. As always, you can find all of our content here at si.com, College, Michigan State, or just search Spartan Nation on Google, and that will come right out. Spartan Nation SI. You can find all of our stuff. If you're watching on Facebook, go check out our YouTube channel. And if you're watching on YouTube, go check out our Facebook channel. We would appreciate that. So good to visit with you guys again and to talk some Michigan State hoops and football. We will be back next week and maybe talking about another Michigan State win. That's what we hope for. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week.